why would he be going there on a South African government presidential plane and on South African government business? What did you be doing there? They didn't think about those questions coming up. So now those pictures went out. The South Africans were flabbergasted. The DA, which is in partnership with the ANC, is thinking, President Ramaphosa, we're in government together. How did you take a government trip without consulting us to tell us what you're going to do in Zimbabwe? And why would you go there as the president of South Africa at a time that these people are beating the opposition, they're arresting the opposition, there's Muzembe in jail? Why would you go to that country and rub shoulders with those people, particularly these parallel government individuals and the Gupta-like characters here? They put Ramaphosa in a very tight fix because they wanted to get their PR victory, but they forgot that that PR victory was coming at the expense of their biggest ally in Africa and the most important country in Africa. And so they triggered unforeseen consequences. That is why you see DA is putting pressure on Ramaphosa. The South Africans are putting pressure on Ramaphosa. They want him to justify why the resources of South Africa were used to go to Zimbabwe on a Sunday, on a holiday. What was so important? This is why you see now statements are coming from the president's office confirming that it was a working meeting. And there are also coming statements that are saying we did not know who was going to be there. But still, Ramaphosa cannot come out in the open that I went to negotiate because our neighbors are in another crisis because the wife and the husband are burning their house down again.
Yeah. So now, soon after Monday, Chapo is going to meet Ramaphosa.
Mm-hmm.
Was that an opportunity for a feedback to say good and I have sorted things out?
100%. 100%. And remember, the moment that those photos came out on social media, some of our contacts in South Africa started saying, what the hell is wrong with your people in your country? What is wrong with you Zimbabweans?
Right.
And a lot of people didn't understand the symbolism again, that we just had protests in South Africa against foreigners.
Yes.
And the president and the South African government has not touched those protesters. Even when they've been slapping, beating people and whipping people, they have not made any move against them because they've accepted and allowed those people to do what they're doing, to send a message to African governments that you cannot continue to make bad decisions in your country, hoping that when your people run away from your country, they are going to come into our country. We are no longer going to accept that because our people are going to rebel.
Right.
That message had been sent in the previous week. So Ramaphosa had taken sides with those people that were undertaking protests against migrants. And guess who the migrants are? The predominant migrants in South Africa are Zimbabweans. So that message was being sent to Zimbabwe more louder than any other country.
Right.
And in that same week, 2 days after the last protest, the president of South Africa was forced to go to Zimbabwe. The optics there would not be good because it would seem like he's now going to explain to himself in Zimbabwe. But why would he go and explain to himself in Zimbabwe, which is not a consequential economy, when Mozambique is the biggest trading partner?
He's the biggest trading partner.
Nigeria is the biggest trading partner in terms of giving oil to South Africa. So why would they go and explain to themselves in Zimbabwe instead of Nigeria and Mozambique? And why would Ramaphosa take such a trip that is so risky on the image of South Africa and would dilute the power of South Africa when it seems like Ramaphosa has been summoned to Harare? He would do it if there was a bigger existential threat that made this issue of him looking like a small boy less important.
Right. But what are the implications? This pushback here, he was not aware of some of the people he met in Zimbabwe, or aware of people that he was going to be meeting in Zimbabwe.
He has no option. He was ambushed. Like I said, he was used. He was made to look like an idiot, which is the same thing you've seen many of us who were supporting ZANU-PF. The moment they started doing this, we could no longer be really associated with that. We had to step aside and we have to start saying, irrespective of all the things I've said and promoted these guys, I can no longer support them. That is what Ramaphosa is doing. He was put in a situation, he was put with people he was not supposed to be with. He was supposed to be in a private meeting with secrecy. And then these people come and they bring cameras and then they expose it to the world, embarrassing him. So now he has to distance himself from them.
Right.
But remember, he went to Zimbabwe unprepared, without preparing security protocols, without a forward team. Because if it was a forward team, the forward team would have been there before him. They would have made sure that certain people are taken away and eliminated. Take these people away. They cannot be here when Ramaphosa comes here. But he didn't have the opportunity to do that because it was an emergency trip. When he gets there, he doesn't have an opportunity to sanitize the environment. So they could have been
putting a chopper straight, to the farm.
Exactly. A farm that he had not scouted out, a farm they had not seen whether there are no snipers there. They had not been able to do anything. And remember, Zimbabwe is the same country where when the president who is there now came into power, there was a bombing at a stadium where he was. There was no opportunity for Ramaphosa to ensure that he can't be bombed there. Just a risk, guys. A huge risk, one of the biggest risks that a president of an important country like South Africa can take. But ask yourself, why would he do that, including tolerating these people? Because he never chased them away. He never said this meeting can't happen until these people are cleared out. He was forced to take his meeting. That's how important it was. And then remember, Hopewell was saying that Ramaphosa was supportive of our president, but he also admitted that there was a 4-hour meeting which he wasn't involved in, which people were not involved in, and he didn't know what the contents of that 4-hour meeting was.
Why so the 4-hour meeting is the key here.
Why would there be a 4-hour meeting to congratulate you on Keb? And why would the father of Keb, in the very same moment that that meeting of accepting his baby to be born, would not be celebrating on Twitter that his baby is being born and is being brought into Ramaphosa's hands as the first godfather?
So, given this stage where we are now, first of all, according to your sources, has this tension been averted? And are we about to see a change of course here in terms of CAP 3?
Right. So one thing that is for sure is that the imminent threat and the existential threat that was there has been eliminated. And the reason why there was this imminent threat was last week, Chiwenga should have been fired and a number of generals also fired.
Last week?
Yes.
Damn.
And so these moves were militated by those threats of firing of the vice president and the capital secretary. So that was going to bring us to exactly the same moment where
2017.
Exactly, where Robert Mugabe tried to arrest Chiwenga, tried to arrest some generals, and that triggered what happened. So this is what was threatening to happen here.
Right. Why so the 4-hour meeting is the key here.
Why would there be a 4-hour meeting to congratulate you on Keb? And why would the father of Keb, in the very same moment that that meeting of accepting his baby to be born, would not be celebrating on Twitter that his baby is being born and is being brought into Ramaphosa's hands as the first godfather?
So, given this stage where we are now, first of all, according to your sources, has this tension been averted? And are we about to see a change of course here in terms of CAP 3?
Right. So one thing that is for sure is that the imminent threat and the existential threat that was there has been eliminated. And the reason why there was this imminent threat was last week, Chiwenga should have been fired and a number of generals also fired.
Last week?
Yes.
Damn.
And so these moves were militated by those threats of firing of the vice president and the capital of state. So that was going to bring us to exactly the same moment where
2017.
Exactly, where Robert Mugabe tried to arrest Chiwenga, tried to arrest some generals, and that triggered what happened. So this is what was threatening to happen here.
Right.
So it looks as if that has been militated for now, and the sides are what? Are talking.
But now, with that threat now, knowing, Chiwenga knowing, and the generals now knowing that, he was prepared, to be doing that, things will never be the same.
I think what was happening here was all along what we've been seeing with CAB 3 is that it was a test of, it was daring each other. There are two sides here. Both sides believe that they've got loyalists both in the party and loyalists in the army, loyalists in the police, loyalists in the presidential guard. Both parties believe they've got people within. Mm-hmm. The question is, how much support did people have? No one knew. Because the generals in the army can never really state their position.
Yes.
They can never say that we are behind this one or that one or that one. They don't say that. It is only at the last minute, when action is about to be taken against some of them, that people take positions. That is why Mugabe wanted to arrest Chiwenga and some generals. He thought he had the loyalty of the army. In the same way that CAB has been pushed, all these boundaries have been pushed, and we got into a point where there is a possibility that there could be a targeting of the vice president because they believe they've got the power. And then the message came out that, there's resistance. It's no different to how they've been pushing CAB, and then people like me stood up when we were unexpected to stand up. That is also what is beginning to happen in structures of the what? The institutions of the country. So when you push in what is that book, Art of War? When you push people to dead ground, where this person has no option, his back is against the wall, and now they have to fight. Only then can you know whether you can beat this person or they're going to defeat you.
Yes, yes.
And that's where we got to last week.
Yeah. Now that you're saying that, you can actually put things, the dominoes into place.
Yes. Saka those allegations ekuti vanatemba vanga vada kuorganize ma-protests.
Yes, yes.
True.
And those t-shirts which they dismissed as kuti handi hapana chiripo. But
ini nditori nevanhu vari muarmy vakatonditumira mapictures akati ona zvaakuita vanhu vako. And the reason zvazvinziona zvakuita vanhu vako is I was always associated with them because I used to hit Geza big time.
Oh, yes.
So I could have been on that list that you saw last time being put with Vana Joshua Maponga as the criminals against the state. I would have been there. Because if you look at what I used to do and what Joshua Maponga does, I mean, there are light years difference there. Joshua doesn't do anything for these guys.
ndofunga abiniti tagwirei.
But imimi guys, mukaona murume mukuru akutiza vanhu vaakambenge akamira navo, you must know that there's something that he knows and the things that we know that other people don't know.
Yeah, that is true.
Vanatemba they are risking living in exile for the rest of their lives, because even when these people talk to each other, there are people within this team that cannot be dispensed with. So they're going to be ministers who can be dispensed with. They're going to be technocrats that can be dispensed with even when there is a change in power. So when these people negotiate, vanokwanisa kubvumirana. And like Grace Mugabe remained in Zimbabwe after Mugabe went, there are certain people here who are not going to leave Zimbabwe and who are not going to be arrested, who continue to live normal lives. But there are those that are going to be thrown under the bus, who are going to be pushed out of the country, who are going to be in exile like the Moyos. And Themba risks that.
And abatogara ari munhu wemahandouts and akomana akazobuda kunzoka mana akaigonere
funga zvako onzi paThemba kuti hanzi munhu akabvisa masanctions uri kuda mahandouts aiwa ndakashanda basa rangu inini
aiwa mutemo hurumende unoti munhu ashanda ngapi mari yake
saka nditori munhu anotofa kutopiwa matreasury bills ndikutokweretwa but iye uyu haana chaanoita
haana Themba ndekuda ngofadza pasi pemhino aiwa
Maponga same thing
akuda kufadza pasi pemhino
Maponga same thing anodzokera kuSouth Africa kwaasiri kudiwa and then there are people who will not be dispensed with. It wouldn't be surprising.
The country has entered into a volatile phase. And that is why the region is reacting. Because the region is watching Zimbabwe. Because an unstable Zimbabwe is not good for the region. We are seeing political decisions that are about to trigger security consequences. This is what is happening in Zimbabwe. But there's something else, that is, coming out, which we need to be concerned with, or which we need to be seized with. When a constitutional amendment becomes a regional concern, it means that the domestic political process has lost public trust. And the evidence is there. It means us as citizens and them as neighbors and them as observers no longer believe that the institutions alone can manage the transition. If that transition is ever to happen, or if we ever get to that point. That is why when you see Rutendo bringing out the narrative, it gains traction. Not because he just like to put things out there, but because people are sensing that something is happening beneath the surface, and that is key and that is important to understand. So whether Rutendo is going to clarify, Ramaphosa came to avert a coup, to manage optics, to stabilize relations, or simply to respond to an invitation, the symbolism remains the same. That his visit was not normal. His spokesperson distancing him from everything that was going on that is being talked about was also not normal. The lady who spoke today, distancing, was also not normal. And the regional conversation that is following is not normal. So we should be at a point now where we should be reflecting on the state of governance, legitimacy, and constitutionalism in Zimbabwe. We should ask ourselves why there is this indication from the region, like the region is feeling that they need to monitor our internal politics so closely. And we need to confront the reality that stability is not just about avoiding conflict in Zimbabwe. It is about building institutions that citizens trust, leaders respect, and neighbors do not have to worry about. The real story is why we are having a claim that has been made and why that claim feels believable. A claim of a coup, a claim of a 2017, and the need to want to have an intervention from South Africa to come in and avert the crisis. So that is my opening, ladies and gentlemen. If you can make a request, I'll bring you. But I want to start, with Rutendo. Rutendo, do you want to make a request, my brother? And then I bring you into this conversation. tofambira mberi nechirongwa chedu tinzoona zvinhu zvakamira sei. But that is, the story. I want to welcome, everyone who has joined me after I had done my, 2-3 minutes, greetings. Vamwe yenyu teze ngetakupotsai because munozopinda ka later on. But regai timbodai so. But anyway, welcome. Right, Rutendo, how you doing?
I'm good, my brothers. Rudy.
Ngodaro.
Wonderful.
I hope wagara pari stable.
I'm sitting very stable, wangu.
Right. Hey, tell the guy what is going on. What is and the authority, if you can, the authority for this expose?
Uncle Jed, before I even talk about authorities, I'm just curious to understand from the Zimbabwean people that we are a cultured people. We have got a very serious culture that has got protocols, that has got systems, that has got norms and rituals.
Yeah.
How can we as the Zimbabwean people, with all these rituals and norms of our custom, not recognize the signs of a crisis in our own country? Yet, if in our own homes, Tete, Baba Mkuru, Nana Baba were to come to a house in Zimbabwe in the middle of the night, and relatives from Zimba, relatives from Binga, catch buses to arrive to a house in Zimbabwe in the middle of the night, surely we will all know that it is a sign that there is a crisis in the home. There is not a celebration when relatives come in the middle of the night, have to catch emergency buses all the way from Binga to come through to our home. Worse still, if the chief of the village and the sangoma of the village make their way to that very same house at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing normal about that. It's abnormal. And this is what I was thinking, that the Zimbabwean people will recognize that the coming of Cyril Ramaphosa on a Sunday of a long weekend, a long workers' day weekend, and him coming without planning, without scheduling. And for heads of states to travel, they need what you call the forward team to go into the country where they're going. Their security needs to go and check. They need to check the venues where they're going. They need to check the venue doesn't have a bomb, doesn't have a sniper, doesn't have assassins. And so then they can clear their president to travel. But here, Ramaphosa got into the presidential private jet, went to Zimbabwe without warning, without a forward team checking whether where he's going is safe, landed and went to a private property. You might say our president is his counterpart, but they're not counterparts to that extent that he can go to his farm without checking.
They don't know each other like that.
So there was a lot of risk in the office of the South African presidency having their president travel unprepared, unscheduled, unplanned, and without doing the necessary security protocols. It had to have been a crisis for him to put his life in danger to that extent. And imagine if something had happened to Ramaphosa, it would be a crisis for South Africa. But they felt that the crisis of Ramaphosa getting injured or something happening to him in Zimbabwe was a better threat than the imminent threat that he went to deal with. And what would be the threat that would be more imminent and more scary than Ramaphosa running into problems in Zimbabwe?
Right.
And did you see another thing? He gets to Zimbabwe, he parks his jet, I think it's Charles Prince or one of those airports, and then he gets into a chopper of the government of Zimbabwe in this volatile environment where helicopters have fallen in Zimbabwe, and he decides to still get on that helicopter. Imagine the amount of trust, but the risk that was taken. Why?
Yeah.
As Zimbabweans, as Africans with rituals and protocols, we understand that Munu Mukuru of the magnitude of Ramaphosa, the most important leader on the African continent, the only leader who sits in G20, would not risk his life to come to a country that is violating human rights, that has been indicted by its own Zimbabwean Human Rights Council report that they have been beating people, they've been arresting people, and they've not been following their constitution, he would not risk to be associated with that country unless there was an existential threat for that country, his country, and the region.
Right.
Anyone who argues against that is not thinking. Anyone who argues against that is like a person who is told that last night, the Sangom of the village, the Sabuku of the village, the chief of the village, and all our relatives came to the house in the middle of the night, and he says, it was just to come and say good night.
So,
lastly, before you go, I want to put the last one. Jonathan Moyo, the most prominent politician in Zimbabwe, the preeminent political mind of Zimbabwe, the father of Cab 3, who has just impregnated his wife, who he was expecting to deliver Cab 3, all of a sudden goes silent for 5 days. Ramaphosa comes to Zimbabwe, and the Warakashi say he came to congratulate Warakashi on Cab 3, but the father of Cab 3 has remained quiet and not posted for 5 days and not commented about Ramaphosa coming. That is abnormal. Thank you, my brother. You can go.
Right. So okay. I want to link this now. This visit to the Zimbabwe internal politics. In your view, which internal tensions in Zimbabwe do you believe raised this risk of instability?
Right. So first of all, let me put it to you like this. A lot of people have been wondering, where is this information coming from? I think I have said on this platform that we were tasked to speak to the counterparts of Zimbabwe in the ANC and the government of South Africa to help us in the fight against sanctions.
Yes.
And we have explained that we also converted them to stand with Zimbabwe when Mumba's report came out, on the pretext that they believe that elections in a Zimbabwe that's under sanctions were creating conditions of unfair elections that are in favor of the opposition. So we've got friends in the system.
Right.
It is those friends in the system that told us, first of all, before the visit, that an emergency call had come to President Ramaphosa, warning him that things were about to explode in Zimbabwe. And there was a request for him to go and intervene. That phone call came on the Saturday night.
Is it the one that came from Chapo?
Yes.
All right.
And they had to communicate with Harare that very same night and say, we're coming tomorrow. Not asking for permission. And it is not that he was invited to Zimbabwe. It's a lie. He was not invited to Zimbabwe. He told the Zimbabweans, we are coming.
Right.
We're coming there. Right? But remember, it was a holiday. A long holiday. So dignitaries, some of the government officials in South Africa had gone on holiday. That's number one. Number two, not all of them could be told what was going down. This was a secret mission.
Even the DA was not even aware.
They could not be told because they don't like ZANU-PF. Because we are trying to solve this problem as Africans, African solutions for African problems, quietly under the carpet, so that we do not make it look like there's instability and that Africans cannot govern themselves. So he comes to Harare. Harare is supposed to also understand the protocol of secrecy here. But unfortunately, a lot of our ministers are not available. A lot of our ministers are not even informed. And instead, they inform the internal cabinet, this alternative cabinet that I talked about here on this group last time, that there is a parallel cabinet that meets every day at 7 o'clock at the president's private office every single day, planning affairs of Zimbabwe, yet they're unelected. That cabinet was the one that was told. And don't you find it funny that that cabinet was available? They did not go to Switzerland. They did not go to Dubai. They were in Zimbabwe on this particular weekend. And instead of them following what would have been logical diplomatic protocol in this circumstance, maintain the privacy that South Africa maintained, maintain the silence, and have a private, because part and part of why it was done at the farm is it was hoping that it would be a private affair.
Private, yes. Not knowing that, we had a Zimbabwe next top model, and out of a picture of my president.
This is why I said now what happened here is that our president then got into a situation where he wanted to have his cake and he wanted to eat it too. Or he wanted to kill two birds with one stone. Without realizing that killing those two birds with one stone would cancel the whole purpose of the visit. So, where we're supposed to have a secret meeting in private, away from prying eyes, away from government facilities, they decided to have cameras. The parallel cabinet decided to invite cameras because they thought it was going to be the biggest PR victory of Cab Life. They decided to use the president of the most powerful country in Africa without his authority. They decided to make him a condom. They decided to use him the way they've used people like Rutendo and many others to do things.
Right.
For their own benefit without thinking of the person that they're using and how they feel. So they used Ramaphosa. But they forgot, because of the lack of diplomatic protocol, because of the lack of experts in international relations, because of the lack of experts in geopolitics, they forgot that South Africa is a geopolitical pivot whose president has to answer to his own people for mixing with people that do not share the values of democracy and human rights. And also he has to answer to the G20 and international powers as to what he would be doing with these kind of people and a parallel cabinet.
Yeah.
And why would he be going there on a South African government presidential plane and on South African government business? What did you be doing there? They didn't think about those questions coming up. South Africa was and then there are people who will not be dispensed with. It wouldn't be surprising if Wanama Gua Matanga get rehabilitated. It won't be surprising Wanama Ngunjuka get rehabilitated. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Achagure, I don't think he's dispensable. Mariake ichadiwa mnyika. Mabusiness yake achadiwa mnyika.
But I find it quite dispensable because I'm married.
But pane vachaita dispensable hapa.
Oh yes. Because kana move yaitwa what do you make of it? Yekuti he's trying to get a divorce case yake thrown away in Zimbabwe because it is tied to what is happening in South Africa in terms of the freezing of his monies and the capture of this aircraft, that is, or the detaining of this aircraft, in South Africa.
I don't understand his argument, because his argument is no different to I don't know if you guys know the DJ, the Black Coffee. The South African courts have already made a precedent to say if you were married in a traditional marriage, then you were married in community of property with your wife.
Oh yes,
You're married in common law, you're married in community of property with your wife. So what I've heard is, it sounds like Wicknell is saying that he had a traditional marriage with his wife. That illustrates and confirms that there was a traditional marriage.
And so that
there should be in community of property and 50-50 with the wife. That's my understanding according to the ruling and precedent set in South Africa.
Right. There's a question in Ngirbuya and this one. Pane story ya breakwa ndayotanga kuiona kuwa Bloomberg ya breakwa futi Reuters Africa, where it's being said kuti we are going to be retaining 67 farms. Anga covered bilateral investment pacts.
People, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Saka munarubunza dizo, why is ED making this move? Is this not a desperate move?
It's tricky to say that it has anything to do with what we're talking about because they've lost in courts. There's a tribunal in Singapore where
Right.
the case here yakaendeswa na Van Persold,
Uh-huh.
who was the owner of Border Timbers, if I'm not mistaken. He has gone and he has challenged the taking of his farm because it was protected by BIPA agreements. I think he's Swiss. And because it was protected by BIPA agreements, Switzerland, Germany, and most of the European Union had signed BIPA agreements with Zimbabwe. And so because of the loss of that case, which has, I think, said that the Zimbabwean government must pay $400 million to Van Persold and return his property. They must pay $400 million or return his property. This is the precedence and the court precedence that has shown that they owe the Europeans. And so what is happening is because they want debt restructuring right now, they are unable to have the Europeans vote for them to get the debt restructuring because
Yes.
they have not fulfilled some of the obligations that the Europeans feel need to be fulfilled. So because there are talks right now between our Ministry of Finance and the Europeans and Americans to restructure Zimbabwe's debt, that's why now they are starting to have this discussion. Zimbabwe wants to get money from the IMF and Paris Club. They want restructuring of their debts. And that can be done if the votes on those multilateral institutions are given in their favor. So we have a situation where Zidera still stands and the United States can instruct its directors to vote or not vote for Zimbabwe. But you can also have the Europeans vote with Zimbabwe even when the Americans refuse, and that will give a majority vote to Zimbabwe, and restructuring can be given to Zimbabwe, or debt can be given to restruct to Zimbabwe from these multilateral institutions. But the Europeans will not vote for Zimbabwe or with Zimbabwe as long as they're unhappy about some of these outstanding issues. So that is one of the motivations why President Mnangagwa might be forced to do this. People have read into it that President Mnangagwa must give this land to try and impress and appease the Europeans so that they can accept CAB. No, I don't think this has anything to do with CAB.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And remember, I wrote a write-up in which I said, Kudata Gray is a member of the World Economic Forum. And his company, Sakunda, is a partner. It's one of only 900 companies internationally that are a partner to the World Economic Forum. So this means that Kuda sits on a body of the men and women and the financial institutions that run the world. And so those people have told him that if you are going to be president of this country, or if your president is going to succeed in taking this country forward, you need debt restructuring, and we can give you that debt restructuring, but on the following conditions. And one of those conditions would be honor your agreement with our citizens.
Uh-huh.
So the Zimbabwean government could have compensated them financially, or they need to return the land. I don't think they've got the money. So what they'll do is they'll compensate them with the land. And a lot of those men and women who had those properties that were protected by BIPA agreements are Germans, Swiss, and they're Swiss bankers, they're German bankers, they're European bankers, and billionaires.
Yeah. 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 Okay, let us strip everything back and everything back to the conversation. Right. So we saw the Politburo meeting. The two vice presidents were not there.
Yes.
ED was flanked by Amudenda and Opa. What's up with that?
Honestly speaking, I haven't gotten any internal information to confirm anything there.
Ah.
All right. So I don't really know.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I don't really know. People have read it, but now you need to take everything together.
Yes.
So we look at the aspect that there are those rumors that last week, Chiwenga was supposed to be targeted. So that is a potential possibility that's why he didn't come. We look at the release of Muzembe.
Yes.
Unceremoniously. Just
And the
after
timing.
Ramaphosa comes, a day later, Muzembe is released. On the very same day that Mzembe is released, the people that were prosecuting Mzembe, which is the prosecutor general, comes out and makes an announcement that my prosecutors, you need to prosecute people apolitically and stop making political prosecutions. We need to become more professional. All of a sudden, it sounds like that system, the prosecutorial system and the justice system, overnight just decided to reform themselves a day after Ramaphosa came. Now, someone would read into that and say, either a very big change is coming in future that is now making a lot of these officials not want to be on the wrong side. So they're reforming themselves.
But that reform, it has to be all-encompassing because members of the opposition, they're languishing, are in prison, being 100%. Denied bail.
100%. But I think that the move that Mzembe was released, then the prosecutor general makes this statement, could be the beginning of those changes, because it means some of those opposition members still have to go to court, and in those court applications where they apply for bail, there has to be either the prosecution resisting the bail application, or in some cases the prosecution might actually say we are withdrawing a case against certain people. So we'll see in the next couple of days. But the release of a political prisoner,
yes,
of the magnitude of Mzembe, is very telling.
Yeah, indeed, it is.
And again, we need to reiterate, it happened a day after Ramaphosa came. It happened a day after Jonathan Moyo went into mourning about the death of his baby.
Death of his baby?
Yes, the death of his baby. Because Ramaphosa came to celebrate the birth of the baby.
Yes.
The father of the baby all of a sudden went into mourning. So now we begin to assume that no, Ramaphosa came to the funeral of Cap 3.
But on our side, on the Zimbabwean side, I've not seen any response that is coming against these assertions that he didn't know who he was going to be meeting. But why is it on the Zimbabwean side there's nothing that is coming out?
Because on the Zimbabwean side they were embarrassed. They told us that Ramaphosa came for a visit to visit his friend at his farm to endorse Cap 3. The South African government wrote a statement and unequivocally debunked that. And so the question is, why were they lying?
Yeah.
And after they've been exposed for their lie, and the South African government is seemingly taking a position that is saying, Murkuti wanzira and Maakuti boa.
Yes.
There seems to also have been an instruction for them to stop punting that narrative because it's embarrassing their counterpart in South Africa.
Right.
The South African statement, soon after the Zigananda had been doing what they're doing, was a clear statement to say, don't lie. And my understanding, you are using our leader for your shenanigans, and your shenanigans that you're trying to advance are unconstitutional, violate the what you call it of the Zimbabwean people, and you are now putting us at loggerheads. And now you need to remember that there are many leverages that Ramaphosa could have used in that meeting.
Yes.
He could have said, listen here, we've been renewing ZDP for the past 4 years. We can cancel it tomorrow and start chasing the people tomorrow. We can double down on our efforts to deport illegal immigrants, because right now I think they're going to bring in 40,000 new Home Affairs officers. That's huge. And we'll begin to deport your people. We can let those people who are protesting raise the heat, and we'll turn our eye. Your people will come home.
And those people, they are not, backing down. I saw a video of them in their thousands.
But have you noticed they are not beating, they are not killing, they are not burning. That's when you realize that there's military precision to this, and there are strict instructions that they've been given to undertake these protests. That's how we know, some of us know, that the government of South Africa is involved here. No one has been killed. No one.
No one, yes.
All the people you've been seeing being beaten by those guys are people from their own group who have been getting overexcited and starting to talk.
Okay. Those overzealous, guys, there's one that are being beaten.
Those are the ones that are being beaten.
Yeah, so there's a...
The guy you saw being punched there was robbing a foreigner who was sitting on the ground. That's why he was beaten like that by those fists.
But just because they're known for that, one would assume that it was a foreigner, who was being beaten. But now it's now something else.
It was one of the members of that Zulu group who had it was actually, he wasn't part of that group, but he was. There were attacks that had happened before those guys got there, and then they started beating those guys who were attacking the foreigners.
Right. Ru, do you want to ask him? Do you want to ask a question, please? I'll check the mic.
Yes, Mascota say, guys, how's everyone? Hi, Rutendo.
Hi, Ruth.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, because I want you to clarify just for, I'm always really curious in some of these things. You mentioned Mzimba, and this has come up a lot, actually. I think yesterday this came up as well about Mzimba being released. And from your opinion, why do you think this is a crucial piece in the puzzle of everything that is going on? What's his significance, like when you're thinking about Mzimba's story in all this?
Look, I raised this before and I want you to grasp it. So let's go back and take it back to our culture. So in our culture, if you are a family member who abuses your wife, you are having small houses, you don't look after your kids, you beat your kids and wife, your relatives cannot visit you in the middle of the night and then you claim that they came to visit you because they like you so much. And your relatives cannot come and visit you just for a mere visit because it embarrasses them when they seem to be endorsing your bad behavior. So the only reason they can come to see you is to modify your behavior, to reprimand you, or for a serious emergency that could force them to come. So Ramaphosa can't come to Zimbabwe to visit a ZANU-PF that has been violating human rights by arresting people like Mzimba, denying them bail, beating and arresting opposition members who are opposing the bill, and you are trying to push in your bill without following the constitutional processes, and your own Human Rights Council is condemning you. Ramaphosa cannot come to visit you and be seen as if they visited you to come and give you a pat on the back when you are doing things that go against his constitution and the value systems of his country. So there has to be a symbol of correction after Ramaphosa has come. So Ramaphosa will tell you, release Mzimba so that tomorrow after I've left, it seems like you have done something right, to show that I did not come to be a bad influence. Modify your behavior to prove that I have not come to the constitution and the value systems of his country. So there has to be a symbol of correction after Ramaphosa has come. So Ramaphosa will tell you, release Mzimba so that tomorrow after I've left, it seems like you have done something right, to show that I did not come to be a bad influence. Modify your behavior to prove that I have not come to condone your bad behavior. Hence, you start hearing the Prosecutor General making an announcement that we need to stop having political arrests or political prosecutions. So it was a symbol, a subtle symbol meant to be sent after Ramaphosa comes to communicate to the Zimbabwean people that Ramaphosa did not come to endorse bad behavior. He came to encourage good behavior and values that are similar to those of South Africa. So if you really try to look at it, Ramaphosa comes and there is an automatic and immediate change to behavior the next day.
But why Mzimba? Because there's been many arrests that have gone on. why would they do that with Mzembe? And whilst I'm on that follow-up question, another thing that I'm thinking here as well is then why bring Wicknell and Tagwere in the helicopter, especially when now he's trying to claim that, oh, I just came, no, you didn't just arrive. You were actually invited on the same helicopter that the head of state was on. Do you know what I mean?
Some of these questions, Ru, I've answered in my video. And I think it's important for guys, when you want to engage in some of these discussions, let's research, let's read material that is there, let's watch the videos, let's get knowledge.
Oh, but Rutendo, you can't. I understand what you're saying, but there's so much content that's going out there. I did not see your video that it even existed.
All
So
right, that's fine.
I
Let me
hear
give you
your
an answer.
position, but come on.
So let me no, but it's important to research, Ru, because it's pointless for me to come and speak here when you guys listen, but you're not really listening.
As you can hear, I have a 3-month-old. I'm not spending the whole day researching. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, come on, you don't do like that.
All right, but what I'm trying to say is, and this is a discussion I had with Jed, to say, Jed, you've got change makers among you, but you have to support those change makers if you want the change to come through. Let's share each other's content. I'm not saying spend your whole day on social media, but there's some key people on your side that you guys need to be listening to for you to be able to advance the fight. Why do I say that? When Moyo posts, all Varakashi, everybody go, listen, share. And they continue to reshare his content to give it traction so that they advance their narrative and agenda. Tina, we need to do the same thing. We need to have key players. If you know that Jed is a key player, if you know that Change Radio is a key player, if you know Rutendo is a key player, go and listen to their stories so that you understand the narrative that you guys are supposed to continue to advance for the change we want. So I went and I explained that Ramaphosa came here with good intentions. His good intentions were to come and stop a potential catastrophe that would affect the entire region and this country as well. But when he gets to Zimbabwe, he's not in control. He cannot determine, and that's why I've been making this story about he couldn't even send his own forward security team to go and secure the conditions that Ramaphosa needs. He didn't have time for that. So when he gets there and he's told, this is the plane you're getting into, and people like Wicknell are put in there with him, he has no say. And because he's coming to achieve an agenda, an urgent agenda, he cannot choose to say, I'm not going back to South Africa if you guys do not get these people out of the helicopter. When they start taking pictures of him, of a meeting that is supposed to be secret, he has no choice. So he was held ransom and exploited. But in the back of his mind, he was thinking that the people I'm dealing with here understand the need for secrecy and the importance of this meeting to happen and for us to get a solution. He thought he was dealing with logically minded diplomats and people who understand corporate governance and diplomacy. He didn't know he was dealing with a bunch of people who don't follow the rules. Spoiled brats who have been breaking rules in Zimbabwe and who break rules that are international norms because they simply don't understand the bigger picture. They're all about their small picture. So Ramaphosa was caught unawares. He was a man who went into a situation thinking kuti vanhu vandiri kudhila navo understand zvatiri kuita panapa. They understand norms and values. And that's why I keep saying to you, when I made my video, I'm saying our president did two things that are diametrically opposed. He tried to allow Ramaphosa to mediate and to quench this potential threat that could divide our nation. But while he was doing that, he also had a part of him that wanted to use Ramaphosa to endorse the parallel parliament and parallel ZANU-PF structure, which if you look at it, the two are counterintuitive and they are diametrically opposed. Once you allow the mediation of the coup, it means you have to end this parallel cabinet and end the ambitions of this Gananda and the promotion of CAB 3. Because if you keep promoting CAB 3, then you keep promoting the conditions that make a coup or a civil war potentially possible. The president didn't seem to acknowledge and understand that to choose one action, if we allow Ramaphosa to mediate, let him mediate, and then we stop the parallels Gananda cabinet and their agenda to promote a CAB 3 and the agenda to stop the succession of those that are picked by ZANU-PF. But you saw him trying to play both cards, but the both cards cannot be played at the same time. One cancels out the other.